That's been a blast to work on and has been a completely beautiful accident for the most part. So, on Path of Magic, there's all these different traders, and depending on the situation you summon the trader into, they may be a different variant of the trader, right? So here we have a Dvergr Blacksmith, and if you want to learn more, you can type Blacksmith ? And then you'll see some stuff on the screen. As we can see, we can temper our gear, empower our gear, or strengthen our gear. And for now, I'm going to talk to you about the tempered and empowering mechanisms, because these are things that are pretty solid. They've been playtested a bunch, and I'm confident that they're worth it and they work well. So we're going to get into them. So the first one is a way to temporarily increase the durability of a specific item while also producing an item sink. If you've noticed in Valheim, you'll often be out, let's say I was out with this iron axe, and I'm going around, I'm chopping wood or whatever. You break your axe, right? And you have to go back and repair it. Depending on the level of the axe, it'll have more durability, but the highest you can go is, in this case, 325. Well, with sharpening, we can actually change that experience. So if I go over and grab a hammer, for example, probably here, yeah. Now I can make one of the coin piles. And every time you want to sharpen, or temper, rather, you have to make a coin pile. There we go, right? And then you throw the item. In this case, we're going to throw the iron axe. And then boom. And this service has no risk. So you can just temper, and it's okay. You're just paying the blacksmith to do something. And now we can see that our durability on this axe is actually triple what it normally is. But the level, everything else about the axe is actually the same. And for example, we see we have 1,000 durability out of 300 something. If I hit something, I've just worn the axe down a bit, right? It's 999. But if I go to a forge here, I can't repair anything. And that's because it's only raised the current durability. It hasn't raised the base durability. And this is why it's sharpening and why it's free. It has or not free, sorry, but why there's no risk. You just pay the coins and it happens. It's a way of giving players more time out of a particular item that they know that they're going to use a lot. And by doing it this way, we make it so that the blacksmith has more practical usage, right? And also, it gives another sink to the coins. Because in general, the more uses coins have, the more immersive most of Valheim feels, because Valheim itself gives coins and treasure and loot consistently throughout the game, regardless of what biome you're in. So if you can get those things to be worth it, if you can give the players lots and lots of reasons to care about coins that are practical, not just so they get a powerful item, but so they get something convenient, so they can build, so they can explore, so they can do whatever they like to do about Valheim, but more. That's the value it serves, right? Now, the other system is empowering. Unlike tempering, empowering itself is a risky activity, because while you may end up with something like this is a partially empowered bone shield, or bone tower shield. It's level 12. So it's much higher than the normal limit of 4, or sometimes 3, or sometimes 2, right? But you can actually go all the way up to 96 or 94, or whatever the max is. So you can make really, really powerful items out of just beginning equipment if you get lucky. And the way it works is you have a blacksmith, and your blacksmith has to have an anvil. And then when he does, you can make a treasure chest like this, right? And then that'll allow you to empower. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna risk our fancy pants shield. And it's already level 12. So whenever you empower, it'll double or get destroyed. So it's a fantastic sync, because either way, the sync wins. Because you make a treasure chest, and you have to pay the treasure chest to even empower, right? So I do that, and then I toss the item, I lose the treasure chest, and then I got lucky. Look at that. I got lucky and the empower succeeded, so I got to keep it. But if you're not lucky, then you lose it, right? You lose it completely. And that means you have to make it again, which is another fantastic sync. And the more syncs in the world, the better the long-term immersion, essentially. Like, it can't be too much. You don't want to overwhelm the players by like having them feel like they constantly have to replace the same things. So if that's happening, it needs to be like tuned down. But aside from that, it's really, really healthy for the server to have lots of long-term syncs. So the empowering system ended up being absolutely awesome for that reason in particular. So now what we're going to do is we're going to see just how powerful some of this gear is. So we have our level 24 bone tower shield, which has an absurd block force, which is going to be interesting, and our bronze shield, which also was recently leveled up. So in my haste, I have forgotten to eat. Let's see, what's our food situation? We have some decent food here. Got some random nonsense. Put this away. Alright, we got our arrow situation. Very low on arrows though, so let's fix that. We need to fix our food situation, our arrow situation. I guess... Ah, yeah, I had the staff of fracturing here, that's right. Hey! What's up? Eater misspelled. Where is Eater? Somewhere. Eater. Over here? Ah, yeah. I didn't see that. How is it actually? It's Eater. Now I'm not confident about it anymore. Let's see. EITR, is that right? I gotta look it up. Yeah, okay. Yeah, good catch. I didn't notice that actually. I saw it earlier, but I just thought of it as the food. Ah, okay, that's what it was. Yeah, I moved my staff of fracturing. So now I just have the shields, then the sword. Let's keep it this way. That's pretty minimal. So all we need for our little dungeoning experience here is money for a cart and arrows. Arrows are super, super important. And if you start on Path of Magic, which you're welcome to, by the way, anyone is free to join. It is a public server, after all. The elemental arrows are really important. So fire arrows, silver arrows, poison arrows, and additionally, silver arrows. They're not elemental, but they're really useful against undead, particularly in the burial chambers. So I'll be doing some burial chambers, and I will show you exactly what I mean very shortly. We have some coins, so we can summon a cart. We have some arrows. I have some fancy-pantsy empowered equipment now. I guess I can do it this way. Arrows, good. We want our default to be the silver arrow. Sure, why not? Alright, now let's find one of these carts. Here's one of my old ultra carts. Hey, it's all full of food. Cool. I'm gonna just organize this a little bit. We can put this into the base. Let's see. We have our eater. This, I think, is loot from... Yeah, this is from the various dungeoning we've been doing. Because the idea on Palm is that instead of having to find a lot of dungeons, you can just find a spot next to one dungeon that you like, and then just keep re-rolling that same dungeon, and you get lots of different materials to build with through that process. The idea is to make a gameplay loop where the player is more incentivized to like dungeon and then use the dungeoning to get building resources, because normally in Valheim getting building resources is sort of separate from dungeoning. So I want to make it so that the same thing, and that's why I'm so focused on these burial chambers and trying to get them to feel like they're long lasting, if that makes sense. Because if the burial chambers can be really fun, then that's like really important. They're the dungeon that gets experienced by most people who try the game, and in general, most people stay in the first couple biomes. So my attitude now is more like, okay, how do we bring the rest of the game to these people who stay in the earlier biomes without invalidating the rest of the game? Yeah, that's the idea. And obviously it's not just like you do one thing to make that happen. You have to consistently change things, try things, adjust things, and see how it changes over time, and what works and what doesn't work. So for now, alright, I think I have cleared most of the nonsense chest. We have our monies, we have most of what we need. Got a cart, and I just need food. Nice. Almost forgot. And I learned from before, it's probably best that I just have health foods. And do I want... I guess I'll just do another one of these. Let's make something better. Alright. What is this? There's something I've lost track of that destroys the cauldron. Because every time I log in, the cauldron is gone. And I never see a message about the cauldron being destroyed, but something destroys the cauldron, and I can never figure out what it is. And like, I get back and the tin's there, and usually if it's a mechanic from Palm, it doesn't give you the material. So I don't know what keeps consistently destroying the cauldron and not other stuff. It's honestly pretty amusing. Alright, so let's see. We have sausages and serpent stew, so we want some kind of stronger health food. Hey, look at that. We got loads and loads of these. So just make like 10 of these, probably be fine. And this almost feels unnatural to me, because when I play Valheim, I'm used to like running around very quickly, using light armor, and using a lot of stamina food. And I basically learned to completely disregard blocking and heavy armor. So now I'm adopting the opposite strategy, which is to use all health food and use a tower shield, right? This is totally out of my comfort zone, but the reason to use all the health food is because on Palm there's all these mechanics about melee, right? And even like just that, right? I can carry more stuff. This is because I'm using a heavy armor set, in this case the bronze set. And the heavy armor sets, in order to make them more useful, they give you more carry weight. And that has been awesome, to be honest. I've really enjoyed that so far. Let's not take any chances here. I'll show off the silver arrow, so unless this kills him in one hit, or I miss. Yeah, there we go, I missed. The silver arrows in Palm are much more powerful, so they make like a lightning bolt, and they also do a lot of AoE damage. So they're incredibly useful to clear the accumulations of undead that you'll often come across. So what I want to do, let's see. I want to grab the cart and then I'm good to go. So we're rested, everything's good. And it's funny because before I was like, I don't really like the bronze gear, but now that I got this wolf cape, I don't know, I feel happy with the bronze gear. And if I can learn to feel happy with the heavy armor, because as I mentioned, I just didn't play that way, that's a good sign. That's a very good sign. Looks like people, you all had an adventure out here, huh? I see a dead teensy. And then also there was a dead geriatric over here. Looks like you all had an adventure of some kind. That's funny because I was looking in the chat earlier. It's on Path of Magic. The server like talks about what people do, right? All more EWP features. And Teens was like, oh, I'll come, but I'm not going to get into any kind of adventuring or anything. And then I see both of them die like 3 or 4 times in the log after that. And it's like, pretty sure they got into some adventuring. I guess we'll hear about it though, we'll see. I got a process now for this. Because the dungeons can be so full of enemies that it takes a while to loot them. So now we have our cart on the outside, an ultra cart, one of the big ones. And on the inside, we want to buy a cart. I'm just gonna ignore all the nonsense happening here. And there we go, we have our internal cart here. Hey, pots outside, pots inside. That's awesome. These are cool because they give you food and also a medal. And sometimes you'll get silver that way, which is nice. Oh, look at, oh no, that is one, okay. I just saw this block, and sometimes you can get all three of the tunnels blocked. And it's funny because the dungeon, it actually still generates, like there's a big dungeon there, but it doesn't matter because, you know, can't access it. What? Look how far back he goes. That is insane. That's because of the block force. Wow, I don't know how I feel about that. Can I even, look, he even knocks back, he knocks back other enemies. That is hilarious. Look at that. Wow. All right. This thing is so strong. I'm about to die though. That's great. Oh no! Did I just? Oh no! I was tripping out about how powerful the block force was. That's not even very far. Wow. I'm wondering what one of the like max block force shields is then, because this one is only a little bit. So if that was happening. Yeah, because it's a block force of 215. That makes sense. The skeleton gets like tossed all the way back to the wall. That was hilarious. I knew it was exaggerated, but I didn't realize it was that exaggerated. Did that? What about like if you're blocking an attack from a really strong monster? You know, like a big monster. Does it also handle it that way? Now I'm genuinely curious. I want to know. Let's see. Can I be impatient? Yeah, I can heal this way. You know, it's funny. I often die so quickly that, like, in that situation, I actually could have saved myself if I had a health potion. But normally, I don't use the health potion fast enough. So even though I have it, I often forget that I have it. I think I actually did have one in that case. But I just, like, I totally forget I'm there. Like, when I'm playing, normally that's one thing. But what ends up happening is I'm narrating. And it's, like, hard to narrate at the same time and also function. So, it ends up working out because I get into chaos. But, let's see. Now as a prime candidate, here we go. We're going to learn our trick. We got to open the door first. And then we can silver arrow everybody. Oh, he got me. These bastards. Oh my gosh. It's just too funny. Oh, a Twitcher. Alright, Mr. Twitcher. I can barely see what's happening here. Ooh. Ooh. Oh! Okay, yeah, because there's 2 hits. The Twitcher got me, and then the Dvergr Elite as well. I got the Twitcher, though. That's chaotic. I love how chaotic it is, to be honest. I also like how it gets all smoky, and then the particle effects from the monsters make it so you can't really see what's happening. But I think... Well, I didn't fully notice, but I'm pretty sure the Twitcher got pushed back as far as the skeleton, but I guess we'll see for sure in a moment. So that's bound to re-show itself somehow. We get to... This just shows... This is pretty much all me dying. Because every time I die, I get one Queen's Jam. So you can count, pretty much. And this other stuff, this was already here. These are loot drops. These are loot drops. Turnip stew is from the ancient pots. And then carrot, or onion soup was already there. Pretty funny. Food's an interesting thing to drop because it helps. It's like a consumable, right? And in general, consumables are more balanced than one-time use items. So if you give a powerful one-time use item like equipment, not one-time use, sorry, one get. Not, how do I say not a consumable? You know what I'm saying? Like, you get this sword once, and then, like, using the sword doesn't destroy it, right? Whereas if I get a sausage and I eat it, it goes away, right? But in general, consumables are more, yeah, they're more balanced because you have to get them again. So if they're more powerful, it like tends to be alright. Whereas if you make a one-time or one-off use item really powerful, then like it stays really useful and it doesn't have to be re-gotten. So it's like easier to make something that's not balanced that way. Alright. So let's see. Now this is a safer a safer situation here to test this thing out. Because I was just tripping out so much about how far. Alright, so basically if you want to fight something with one of these shields, you have to pin it up against the wall, because otherwise it ends up like hockey pucking all the way over somewhere else, right? That's really amusing. I feel like it... Aren't there like games where you do puzzles that way? Okay, hey, calm down, Mr. 2-star Dvergr. Uh-oh. Oh, I got it. Yikes! Alright. I'm gonna leave that spawner alone for now. This is interesting enough for me. Uh-oh. Reroll. Oh, I got a bubble. Nice. I instinctually use the knife because I'm so used to it. Ah, I see. So what's been happening earlier when I die, pretty much, it's because I let myself lose the bubble, and that's really important. So if you're blocking, when you lose the bubble, you'll get a new one. But if you weren't blocking because you were in the middle of an attack, you lose that bubble, and then you're one hit away from dying, as you see. It's like I'll go from like having full health to just dead. But having the health helps make the bubble work. So the health becomes relevant. What's funny though is healing is like almost irrelevant. I've like tried to use healing as an incentivizing mechanic, and it just doesn't really work, to be honest. Because of how one-shotty monsters and fighting are in general on Palm. Like right now, I lost the bubble, so I need to block something to get it back. There we go. And then I can be more reckless, right? There we go. There we go. No, this is relatively smooth. Just because I've cleared everything, that doesn't mean it's safe. On Palm, the dungeons have like respawning timers and stuff. So yeah, I see how the monster just showed up there. As you're fighting stuff, it can come back, and it might come back 30 seconds later, like this looked like it was 20 or 30 seconds. Or it might come back 10 minutes later, or 20 minutes later, or not at all. So you don't really ever know. And that's the idea, is to keep the player on their toes, because basically the more enemies you kill, the more resources you get, because each enemy not only drops its normal loot, which you can sell for coins and get resources, but also has a chance to roll another loot table. So the more enemies you kill, the more of this custom loot table you roll. And that, along with like the Surtling cores and the black cores, you sell all this stuff, and you can then buy the building resources that you want. So the idea is to connect building with the quantity of monsters. Because when we started messing with these things, the monsters themselves basically like didn't correlate, and that was problematic, right? Because you could fight a bunch of monsters, let's say in an iron crypt, but then like you won't necessarily get more iron than in a crypt that just had more iron chests but less monsters, right? And that's not really ideal. Like, the ideal is the deeper the dungeon, the more building materials and loot you get. The more monsters you kill, the more building resources you get. That way it feels worth it, right? To deal with dungeons and to actually continue into one dungeon and keep redoing it. Because that way you're not just getting, you know, Surtling cores for temporary progression or mushrooms for one particular mead. You're getting what you need to build a bunch of cool stuff, right? So that's the idea behind the mechanic. And you can still find that sometimes the dungeons, they're not like always big, right? Like you can find a smaller dungeon. As I mentioned, what's actually happening is a big dungeon gets generated, but then the player, because of how the first couple rooms are oriented, they can only access little parts of that bigger dungeon. And it looks like as long as you keep an eye out for the kind of monsters that are showing up, then you can just keep blocking. You can sort of front your way. Like now I'm vulnerable, right? Because I missed that block. But as long as there aren't any like 2-starred powerful, oh, there's a Twitcher there, right? Like I just missed a block, but I should be okay because most of these enemies are fairly weak. See? There's a 2-star ghost. That's not too crazy. So just by holding the block, I should be able to stay alive. Although this Twitcher, oh, yep. I was gonna say, I was like, I don't have a block. Twitcher, oh, yeah. The Twitchers are like glass cannons. So basically what was happening is up until the Twitcher was one of the last mobs, I was taking hits from other mobs that were less damaging. And those hits were enabling me to reproduce the bubble, right? But as soon as all those other mobs were down, I wasn't taking those lesser hits anymore. And so then the Twitcher hits me with full force, basically, right? And yeah, that's what happened. But that is honestly a lot better than I was hoping for. I definitely, when we did the bubble blocking thing, it was just like a sort of thing I thought might be a bit gimmicky. But how it feels, it's like, I really enjoy that, like, pretty much you'll stay alive if you hold block. And like, you'd think that's super overpowered, right? That you can just hold block and stay alive. But the fact that you have to open yourself up to attack it like makes this interesting balance, and it's pretty cool. Like, to be honest, I'm not gonna lie. Like I said, I didn't do heavy armor or this kind of combat. So I'm pleasantly pleased here. All right, I don't have any more arrows. This guy is the last remaining one, but he's too big to get through this whole way. Ah. And these guys are glass cannons, so like they do a lot of damage, but they're actually pretty easy to destroy, even for a beginning player. Wait, did something spawn behind me? Yeah, it must have been. Yeah, that was just it was a normal ghost, right? I was pretty sure that ghost wasn't gonna kill me, but something else must have got me. Oh man. And that is also something I actually want to happen. Like, I don't know how to make it so it's less jarring for the player. I guess, honestly, I feel like it's an expectation thing, because players are just used to dungeons being, like, boring. No, don't get me wrong. The dungeons in Valheim are beautiful. I love them. And they're really cool, like, visually. But, like, compared to, like, dungeons in traditional games or, like, RPGs or dungeon crawlers, the dungeons in Valheim are very, like, not much can happen to you. It's not like there's any random events getting triggered or nonsense spawning behind you. You know, like, that's just not a thing at all. Whereas in old games, like in Daggerfall, that's like the only way the game could be interesting and add variety. So they leaned more into it, right? And I've been playing those. And hello, Left Half. Hello. Yeah, I do have arrows in the thing. That's true. I see how it would be smart to just leave stuff in here for when I die, right? That would be smart. But really what I need are the silver arrows. The fire arrows are good too, though. If you've never seen the palm arrows, they're all kind of crazy. And I tend not to use the fire arrows inside, because I often end up killing myself, because as you can see, they explode. Like, I don't know what that hurt, but something was there. Alright, the knockback. The knockback is really amusing, to be honest. Very amusing. Alright. Let's see. What was it exactly that killed me earlier? Looks like a whole bunch of nonsense over there. Alright, what's going on here? This looks like a mess. And also, yeah, I don't have EWP because I'm disconnecting. I see. It needs to take like a normal hit. There we go. Yeah, so that's something to keep in mind. EWP works by making the server react to everything that is occurring. So if you're like in a lag moment, basically, that won't happen. So you'll end up not getting like a bubble or not getting a heal, right? Also, I've noticed the heals aren't super reliable. It's supposed to heal you more often, but it ends up being like a proc. I'll probably just stick with that because it feels pretty balanced at the moment, to be honest. Like, I haven't tried with the more powerful stuff, right? But for now, I can handle the enemies. But if I mess up, right? If I stop blocking, then I get in trouble. And that's ideal. That's what we're going for. Uh-oh. Oh, I was gonna kill me. Oh, I got him just in time. Okay, that's the moment though where my guard's down and I don't have a block up, so let's get out of the way here. Where did I die over there? Somewhere. Alright. Can I survive a wraith there? Whoa. Whoa. Let's go out here. Seems like a better... I can survive a skeleton hit. Yeah, there we go. Oof. Yeah, it's like you almost want the hits from the weaker enemies. It's funny. All right. Hey, what was that? Hey, calm down, Mr. Jeez, I did not even see that guy. Well, at least I have some closer body now. And I'll be smart. Just as Leftaf mentioned, there are arrows in the base. So basically, I should use some of the silver that we now have from our previous voyage. In one of the previous live streams, I went to the mountain and mined a little bits of silver. I got like 50, like as much as one heavy armor equipped belted character can hold, which turned out to be like 50. But that should be good because now we can make. We only need a couple arrows, really. Even just one stack is fine. Yeah, we have 20. Look at that. Awesome. I could make a couple more empowers if I wanted to. Might be a good way to destroy that abyssal dagger. Interesting. Interesting. Well, for now. Alright, we're good. We got our super fancy save the day arrow. This is where the silver arrow comes in clutch for these moments where everything is all... What's the word? AWOL? No, not AWOL. There's some military term. Fucked up beyond all recognition. Beyond bubble. I don't remember what it is. But that's where silver arrows come in. Usually you'll end up getting like ganked by a bunch of enemies, right? And then luckily it's not so bad because once you die they usually will sort of go back to wherever they were from. Pretty much. So that's why they like kind of leave you alone, basically. Let's see, I guess I need to use my Dark Scrolls strat. It looks like you can pretty much just like button mash. Oh gosh, look at all those. But if you hold down, yeah, I see. Okay. The problem though is if you hold down, if you get like one of these 2-star enemies into the pack, it becomes very intense, right? But the 2-star enemies can also eat, they can eat the silver arrows. Because if you notice, the silver arrow, like, first off, for it to even work, you have to hit an enemy that can survive one hit of the silver arrow. So the more powerful enemies are actually more useful in that way. Then to actually get the bubble, you need the weaker enemies. Ooh, 2-star ghosts. Ouch. Yeah, these 2-star enemies, you have to be so careful because you lose that bubble, and you go from like being able to like be fine, right, to just dying. It all depends on what enemy lands the hit on you and how much health you have. But this is what I'm going for. You see how it's like these waves, and you have to be able to like pay attention. But you can do it as long as you're blocking, right? But as you see, I mess up sometimes, and like then I lose the bubble, right? And I have to like sort of, I could stay here, keep the block up, but I need to be able to get into that room and destroy the spawner. But in order to attack, I have to make myself vulnerable, right? So I don't know, honestly, I'm surprised how this feels. I was expecting it to feel much more gimmicky, but this is actually quite fun. And I think the issue with the monster spawning, like, it's not really a the problem is more that players don't think that the dungeons are that dangerous. Because once you learn, like, you're not safe. You're in a dungeon, a monster could just show up behind you. Like, once you know that, you expect it. And then, like, okay, you know what I mean? It's not as much of a problem. The problem is that players are used to dungeons just being like, okay, what I see is what I get. I cleared this room. Now it's not a threat anymore. It's a burial chamber. I can do it. But I don't like that. I like it when it's a threat. regardless. If you stop paying attention, you should, well, get hurt, basically. And I managed to lose my actual body somewhere. Must be around here. Oh. I'm lucky. I got saved by his hitbox. No, lightning bolt. Oh no. So it may not look like I get damaged by that, but the lightning bolt, if you're actually where it hits directly, then it does damage you and it can easily kill you. So that's why I keep like being like, oh shit. There we go. I think we did it. Oh, here's our chance. We got our opening. Ah, yeah, there we go. Nice. So brutal. Woo. Dude, not gonna lie, it's pretty fun. I'm having a time here. I was trying to figure out what to do about the spawning because, yeah, it's like it's hard to balance it because you can. It's like if you just leave it be, it's too bland. But then if you, there you go, that kind of stuff happens, right? So like you have to always be on your toes. But then it's fine. You have to just learn to be more defensive and learn that things can show up behind you. And I think that in the long run, that is better. It's just a, what's it called? Player expectation management. That's what it is. And like, so what I have to make sure to make the experience less abrasive for players is I have to make sure that when a person plays on Path of Magic, if they try and go into a dungeon, ooh, the game tells it, like it knows that they're trying to go into a dungeon, and it tells them like, be careful, or it like warns them. Because the idea, I don't like teaching people through death. I like it when they get warned, so then when they die, they're like, oh, that's right, that thing was real. These freaking 2-star ghosts, they always get me. It's those 2-star mobs, you think everything's fine, you're like, oh, I'm doing great. I can just keep everything alive, I got all the fancy stuff. But then you get a hit in the face with a 2-star and it just nerks you. Look at that foreboding dark presence. This has been a nice dungeon, not gonna lie. Got a bunch of cool loot too. I wonder, where did I put... Where is my actual body? Huh. Did I die on the other side? Let's see. Ah, so I didn't even finish this side. Is that right? Oh, whoa, okay, missed it. Oof. Yeah, right. So even though I killed all the monsters here, whoa! I did not kill those monsters. Wait, what? Yeah, right. So you clear something, right? Like I swear I cleared that area, even though I thought I cleared it. It's very obviously not cleared. There's more enemies, right? So it's like, uh-oh. Where did I actually die? And this is how you can get stuck. And you have to be careful, because if you get stuck and you log out and you have a tombstone in the dungeon, then it can reset and you could lose your body, right? So that's something I haven't, like, I don't want to just put that on the players without them knowing. But at the same time, that's how these older games work. They're very, like, they're not afraid to punish the player, but, like, the player then learns about that and, like, anticipates it, right? And that can help with the immersion. And I think in this case, because the dungeons, it's not like the player has to do the dungeons. Like, they can do other things if they want to, right? They can stay in the overworld. And I like the idea in general of the overworld being safer and the dungeons being like the most dangerous places, but also the places where you can get the most material, right? So in this case, I'm gonna have to go full out silver arrow archer in order to fix this situation. So we're gonna use some stamina food now. And we're gonna make some more silver arrows. This time we're gonna make 40 of them. And we're just gonna go all out. I could also use the silver knife strap, but then I'd probably end up getting myself ganked, to be honest. Whoa, we got a lot of extra arrows with that. That's cool. I'm used to getting like, I'll make like, I don't know, something that makes like 20 of it, and it'll give me one extra thing, right? But here, I made 2 stacks of silver arrows and got 15 extras. That's a lot, to be honest. Yeah. He didn't see me for some reason. Neither one of them saw me. This is what you do, you know? You get ganked by all the undead, and then you get frustrated, and you bring in the silver arrows. And then before you know it, oof. You'll have your vengeance. Hello, teens. Good morning, or good afternoon for you, I suppose. And it's funny because, so the silver arrows are one of the first things we changed, actually. And it was not for what it ended up being used for. It was purely because the silver arrows normally, like the metal arrows in general, are just like totally unused. So the idea is, how can we make it so silver is like useful in the Ashlands? Because if people benefit from going to the mountains before the Ashlands to get silver, then maybe that would be like part of the mechanic. That was the idea, at least. But it ended up turning into a mechanic that's really useful for the extra challenging dungeons in the Black Forest. And by the time you get to the Ashlands, you have so many more powerful options that the silver arrows aren't actually like as useful, which is really interesting because that's the situation they were developed for. But it ended up becoming very useful for a whole other reason. And you can see how the dungeons, like, it's definitely more intense in the sense that if you die, like, I cleared out those areas, right? But because the spawner piles come back, that causes a whole bunch of craziness to happen. And each enemy has a chance to cause another enemy to show up, but on like a delay, right? So that's why it gets so crazy, and there's just like these constant waves of enemies. But then they calm down, right? And for a little bit, there's like a lingering effect. So you'll see that some enemies show up, but once you clear that spawner pile, it's like a lingering respawning afterwards. But it will actually stop. But you have to be able to stay around and clear the excess, right? And then eventually either the spawner pile will come back or it will have rolled the chance that that doesn't happen. So you can see how you can actually clear an area up and then it becomes calm again. But as you saw earlier, I left for a bit, came back, and then there was all sorts of nonsense everywhere. We've already gotten a bunch of loot. Cool, good stuff. Wait, so can we get, wow, 850, that's crazy, look at that. Let's see, what can I toss? There we go. These ghosts, they're so gnarly. Yeah, and you see what's happening now? It's like, it was fine, And now it's still relatively fine. Like, yeah, there's a charred twitcher and a Dvergr elite, but for the most part, it's not that big of a deal because there's no spawner pile there. It's the spawner pile, once that comes back, that's when you may get like a whole horde of enemies showing up. For now, we're okay. Uh-oh, oh no, no, we're not okay, we're not okay, we're not okay, we're not okay, we're not okay. Oh. For some reason, he didn't try and get me. Ooh. That lightning AoE is very interesting because it does damage in a very small area, but extremely. So if you're directly where the lightning bolt hits, it like will wreck. And same for the monsters. Pretty good. I guess I should handle that spawner too. Where? What I'm looking for though is my original body, which is around here somewhere. But where is another issue, right? Another matter entirely. It's definitely not over here. Yeah, this is just some hallway. I can hear the nonsense happening all around me though. This is working pretty well so far. So far we haven't encountered any like completely absurd nonsense. I mean, this is definitely chaotic, don't get me wrong. But if you know what you're doing and you use the... If you know what you're doing and you use the silver arrows, it seems like most situations can be resolved. But I could see how if the player doesn't know about silver arrows and they delve into a dungeon, it's pretty likely that they're gonna go deeper and then get their body like totally lost. Basically what's happened to me. Look at this cart though. Hey, it's got plenty of stuff in it. You know, I'm gonna take advantage of this moment of not having my gear and stuff, and I'm actually going to start loading up the cart on the outside because it'll be easier. And this is the part where this process used to take a while. It was frustrating for me. So now I feel pretty happy about it. In my head, like, oh, I forgot about all of those guys. But the looting process, yeah, I feel happy with it. Obviously, I need to actually, here we go. I need to kill the monsters outside before I start bringing the loot out encumbered. Whew. Brutal. Yeah, I love how there's like an ebb and a flow. Like you block for a bit, then you can still die. Like, honestly, that has been way more successful than I thought it would feel. Because I never really know. You don't know about a mechanic until you like play it, and then you just feel it. And based on that experience, you can tell if it's working or not. And I guess maybe if you haven't played a lot of games, then that doesn't work. But in general, people who play Valheim have played a lot of other games because they tend to be older, so they've just had more time to play other games, right? But I guess that's a good point though, because normally people might not be able to know that, okay, this is why I feel this way, because the game is doing this, and that's giving me this sense, right? Like, normally you might not feel that way, because it's kind of like when you're watching a movie. If you've only seen a couple movies, you might not know how the music plays a role, or how whatever plays a role in your emotion, or how plot twists work, and you might not know about the tropes of the genre that you're watching. So it it allows you to be in suspended like disbelief more easily, right? Whereas once you learn those patterns and those things, you can kind of predict what's going to happen. And if you predict what's going to happen over and over and over again, then you'll feel bored. You'll feel like it's not interesting anymore. So it's like a balance of being predictable enough to give the person a framework for their mind to settle in, but unpredictable enough that they're reminded that they don't know. That's like the trick. But obviously actually balancing that is rather complicated. I'm glad they have these summoned Twitcher mobs. It's an interesting way to introduce players to an Ashlands mob that isn't crazy tanky. Because all of the other Ashlands mobs are balanced for later on in the game, so they have way more health, right? Whereas that one particular mob is like summoned in bulk in certain situations, so they made them like glass cannons, right? Yeah, I got lucky, Pan. I've died so many times in that situation that I know better. It's like the moment you see an enemy and you have encumbered, it's like, oh god, oh god. Like I've been killed that way in Valheim so many times. I have trauma from it, so I was able to react fast enough. But if you see me reacting fast enough, you can assume I died maybe 100 times to have that instinct. It doesn't just show up through foresight. I'm not that good with it. I actually find I don't seem to get bothered that much by dying. Like, that's why for me it was really important really early on in Palm to make it so that when I die I don't like lose everything, because for me, like, I have a lot of fun dying in different situations, and I don't want to just be like punished just because what? Because I died? Like, what's wrong with dying? That means I was trying to have fun. I was trying something dangerous. You know? Like, I don't know. I get the attitude behind trying to punish it. Like, a lot of game design is like that. We think we have to do something. But it's really good to challenge all of the things you think you have to do. Because at the end of the day, do you really have to in the game? And oftentimes we find that when you actually playtest a concept, like, you discover something you didn't know. And you'll develop things much more effectively if you rely on that. But if you rely on having, like, good ideas and thinking about it that way, then it's more challenging. I'm feeling the stew. And that's something I'm very grateful for, because Path of Magic and running the server and maintaining it has taught me about, like, the creative process for game design. And especially, like, the value of live development. Like, I get why people are afraid to work on a server while people are playing on it. And also, it's hard. That's a very unique situation, because normally, like, people don't really like it if you change the rules while people are playing. But on Path of Magic, people come to the server knowing that's happening. So, again, it's like expectation management. That's one of the trickier things. When you start changing the rules and the mechanics, you also have to keep in mind, like, you can't just change the mechanic. You also have to, like, figure out how the player's going to learn about that. And you have to ask yourself, like, okay, how do they know that they can do this? What are they going to try and do? And it makes you think a lot about game design. And for me, a lot of my life has been about getting myself to a point where I can make video games. I've wanted to do that for a very, very long time. But obviously, like, so what? So do so many millions of other people. You know, it's very, very much a common desire. But in my case, when basically my dad died when I was a kid, I was like 10 or 11 when he got sick. And he was sick for a year and a half, and then he died. And that experience, like, projected my consciousness into video games. Like, there was something about the nature of dealing with that as a kid, and it made me really like video games. I played games a lot. I used to read a lot of books and play a lot of games. And then I got into like RuneScape and World of Warcraft and things like this. And for me personally, it did consume huge quantities of my life, but at a time where like I was pretty much alone. So like it's not like I was alone because I was playing video games. It's like video games gave me something to do that was interesting where I didn't feel alone, right? And that was a very formative experience for me as a person. As I got older, I learned to balance games with the rest of my life, because you can't, as a lot of you know, like, I mean, most people who play games are quite sick. It's definitely not normal for people who play a lot of games to be healthy. So you have to learn how to balance like your time using the computer or the console or whatever it is with actual things in real life where you move around. And for me, like, I didn't have that balance at all until I got chickens. I got chickens and room to garden. And then everything changed, because then like I had something to take care of. Someone to take care of, basically. And that allowed me to have more of a balance, because for some reason I could like let myself down, wake up late or whatever, but like I feel truly ashamed of myself if I'm not there for the chickens, because like they're just chickens. Like they're so cute and innocent, and they just want, like, you think chickens are stupid, but that's just chickens in cages. If you raise chickens and you just have them in your yard and you have like a tree for them to be safe under, like they're just like dogs. Like really, they are just like dogs. They're just as destructive, but they want your attention. And like the hens here, they complain if I just use the computer all the time and I don't garden and like hang out with them and sit with them. They literally start complaining. I can feed them all that I want, and it doesn't matter. They'll just complain, because they actually grow a bond with you, and they want. It's not like chickens aren't like dogs. They don't want to be petted, but they want your presence. They absolutely want your presence, and that's something I had no idea about. Absolutely no idea. Especially growing up in the West, like I never even picked up a chicken. I was like, what, 28 or 30 before I picked up a chicken for the first time. How fucked up is that? Like now, I view that as insane, because chickens are so cool and they're such a fundamental part of human history and our existence, and we just abuse them, and we don't understand them, and we made up all this bullshit about roosters that say, oh, like roosters are so aggressive, blah blah blah, all this nonsense. And then when you actually have the animals, they're so cool, and they're really interesting, and they form bonds with you, and they like value your presence. And like the reality is, like, the stuff we complain about is because we keep animals in cages their whole lives. So they behave as if they were raised in a cage because they were raised in a cage, you know? And it's an interesting parallel to our society, because many of us effectively live in cages. So in some ways we're unable to see the caged behavior in others because we don't understand that we live in a caged behavior world. So like also in ourselves, we behave as a caged animal who needs like food and these things and has to be scared of not being fed. And you know, like that's sort of how our life ends up being in many situations. And it's all to do with being restrained, pretty much, and not having access to to what you need to thrive, because ultimately, plants and people, creatures, animals, hens, it's all pretty similar. If you have what you need, you'll do well. What you need isn't money. You think it's money, but the ironic thing is that it's not. Money makes everything more fluid. It gives you more access to agency, to changing your circumstance. But I've met a lot of people, and I've met some very wealthy people, and I can tell you from firsthand experience that they're just as fucked up as everyone else. Like, really. I've known people, looked them in the eye, people who make hundreds of thousands of dollars a month, and they've shown me how it works and all these things, and I can tell you, people in general are miserable. They may seem happy, and it may seem like people have what they want or what you want, but at the end of the day, you're just seeing this facade, this veneer, and the guts of it is that most people are unsatisfied, and they're living vicariously through different things in their life, and they're not really happy about the direction that their life is. They've had to settle, they've had to accept things that they don't really want to accept, but they have no choice. Like, this is how most people live. So, and like I said, I don't mean to be like mean in that way. People don't have a choice. Like, what can they do when they have to be able to work to get the resources they need, and the means they have of working is competing with loads and loads and loads of other people? Like, there's no way for most people to come out on top of that, because we live in a society that values other things above how we treat each other, and that's just the reality of it, right? So ultimately, like, the more you participate in these things, and the more you occupy yourself with this imagery of what other people think and all of this, the more lost you will be and the more unhappy. So the reason I'm telling you this is just because I've seen a lot in my life of people thinking that when you have money, it's gonna fix everything. And I don't have money. There's a lot of things in my life I can't necessarily do because I don't have the money to do them. Like, I can't just buy a property. I can't own anything. I rent everything. I don't have savings, you know. Like, by Western standards, in a lot of ways, I'm a failure, so to speak. I'm in my 30s. I don't have a college degree, yada, yada, yada. But for me personally, I get to do what I really care about. And, like, my dad died when I was a kid, and it showed me, like, life's freaking short. You have no idea what's gonna happen, and everything you think is stable and normal, and it's always been that way. It's only a moment away from all of that changing, and I've lost enough in my life to know that some things aren't worth taking for granted. You have to appreciate them if you can. And I am an individual who, while I may not be formally educated, I may not have any means in the societal world to prove my success to people, I have lived a life where I can honestly say that I can die, and I feel that I'm doing what I care about, and each day I am doing things that aren't hurting people, and I'm able to make people's lives a little bit easier. And for me, that matters, because I got a lot of chances earlier in my life to earn more money, but at the end of the day, someone was always getting screwed over. And, like, we can tell ourselves that that's not happening, but ultimately, money is often very unethical. And it gets cleaned, or so to speak, laundered. And you may think, oh, that's just a drug thing. Like, it's not just a drug thing. Like, most money that is produced is hurting someone somewhere. Very little money that is produced isn't doing that. Even if you look at, like, a cell phone, for example. Like, cell phones have elements in them that you can't get without mining, right? And so yeah, you could pay a company in a developed country that has to pay a lot of regulatory fees and tariffs and taxes, right? You could pay their high rate to get the clean element, but you're a for-profit business. Why not just turn the other cheek and buy it from something unregulated in the foreign market? Obviously, that's what they do. That's what we teach people to do in our own, like, business courses and classes. Yet, for some reason, we act all surprised when it turns out that, oh, yeah, the elements and the metals in these devices and the lithium in batteries and these things, it often comes from situations that are just heinous conditions for the miners. And I don't mean miner, well, no, I mean miners in both senses, actually. Miners like they're young, and miners like they're going and mining stuff. Miners are notoriously abused in these cases. And, like, that's the reality of our world. Like, if you look and you pay attention, almost everything that produces money does so at the expense of some humans somewhere suffering. And if you think that that's not the case, then you found something very special. It really is unusual in this era. And that's why I like Valheim, and I like being able to work on the servers, because I can just make content, and I can teach people about stuff. And, like, I don't feel like I'm screwing them over. Like, if they're playing games, yeah, maybe they're playing games too much. But Valheim, like, it makes you take breaks, and, like, in general, it's a pretty healthy game. So, like, if the worst thing I'm doing is encouraging people to play Valheim too much, I don't know, like, that feels pretty good as far as, like, all the problems in our world go and all the issues that can happen. Like, there's a lot of harsh stuff going on, you know? And, like, in my case, I had a chance to make things work before, years ago, with this dropshipping thing. That's actually how, if you've ever noticed that, like, my videos on Valheim get, like, maybe, like, 1,000 to 2,000 views, but the channel has, like, 20-something thousand subscribers. That's because those are almost all subscribers from an old era where I used to make dropshipping content a long time ago. That's how I got started with YouTube. But it brought me into this world in a way where I met a lot of people who only care about money. And it shocked me. Like, it honestly shocked me. Like, the people I met, what I learned about life, it changed how I felt about money. And, like, I really did used to believe that if you have more money, your life is easier. But in practice, that doesn't actually happen unless you isolate yourself. Because normally what happens is people start earning more money, and then they get surrounded by other people who are incentivized to be fake with them. So there's this bitterness towards the world that grows in the wealthy, particularly the wealthy who mistreat people. There's this thing, I don't know how to explain it, but, like, wealthy people get away with treating people badly, and other people will act like it's not happening to them. So I've met wealthy people who, like, they're genuinely bothered by this. Like, they want to be treated normally. They don't want to be, like, treated that way. But it gets to their heads almost always. So there's all of this, like, systemic abuse that comes from the power dynamics between, like, what it means to be able to provide for everyone around you in a world where few people have enough. It totally changes how people treat you, and you're much more likely to experience, like, people trying to steal things from you, or the more aggressive sides of humanity where, like, if you show that you have something and then you misbehave and you disrespect people, like, someone's gonna take it. Like, like, that's just how it is, you know? And if you don't treat people well, I mean, even for your own sake, like, you should protect yourself by treating people well. So, like, I've learned that personally myself. Like, I've even had situations where, like, people who, like, hurt other people were nice to me. Literally just because, like, I was respectful, and I didn't, like, be aggressive or judgmental or whatever, then they'd leave me alone when they might like attack someone else. And I found that in general, the world, it treats you a lot better when you have a mentality of like openness and sharing. But if you're in a situation where you're surrounded by a lot of suffering people, then your immediate circumstance is going to punish you for being that way. So that's why I was saying how like you sort of have to learn how to manage things better, and that process is quite complicated for people. And I think that games like Valheim, they help a lot because in general we have a lot of competition in our societies, and like the cultures that play Valheim are less competitive. Because honestly, like in the US, for example, Valheim isn't a very popular game, and I think one of the reasons for that is the culture. Because the US is absolutely not a culture that like coordinates well and works together and is diplomatic. Maybe we used to be, but these days we argue and fight, and we've become incredibly divided, and we don't really like at least it's normal in US politics now for both sides to wish violence on the other, and then like bitch and moan about the other doing that and all sorts of crazy nonsense. For me, like, it's just absurd. Like, there is no defending either reality, you know? But other people seem content to just get all worked up about everything, so I don't know. Maybe I'm in a minority in that way. I just feel like our problems come not from like some document or some piece of paper saying what kind of government it is or whatever. Our problems come from the fact that we don't have sympathy and empathy for other human beings. Like, it's simple. We don't care about people in other countries, so we harm people in other countries, and then people in other countries get frustrated with us. And when you look at the history, like, of course, you know, you can't blame them. But like, that's how our world works. It is what it is. For me, like, I used to get frustrated about that. These days, I expect it. So I'm less frustrated when the world is hypocritical. But it has inspired me because, like I mentioned, I want to make video games. And that's why I'm so into Path of Magic, because it's allowing me to test a lot of theories I have about how things work in video games, what feels fun, what feels interesting. Without Path of Magic, everything was just theoretical, right? Whereas now I can actually try these different things and get a lot of experience really quickly for free. And that is incredible for like my game design interests. It's an absolute blessing. So I'm very, very grateful for that. But one of the things I want to do in the long run is figure out how to help with games, because they can be quite unhealthy for people, as I mentioned. And it's not so much that the gaming itself is inherently unhealthy. It's that games have this way of being very insecurely developed. So I'll elaborate a little bit on what I mean by insecure game development. An insecure mentality in development is when you're scared of your players playing another game. It's just like in a relationship. If you're insecure in your romantic relationship, you're going to be scared and jealous that your partner is going to become attracted and interested to someone else, right? You're insecure and you're concerned about your partner being that way. The same thing happens with game developers. When the game developers are insecure, they are overly concerned about their players leaving to play another game. And because insecurity is normal, and we're in a very mentally unwell, unhealthy era of humanity, this is manifest in almost all games that are developed. The developers very rarely these days in particular truly are able to just develop a game. They're often very concerned about what other games are doing, what their competition is doing. And even the notion of competition itself is inherently insecurity. Because the reality is you are one of many, many, many other humans. And you can think of yourself as competitors. But even, let's take another content creator, for example. I've been in situations where people have, like, talked about other content creators in Valheim as if they're my competitors. And I get what that means on a technical level, right? Like, oh, we're competing for viewers on YouTube, and if they watch me, they're not going to watch them, and if they watch them, they're not going to watch me, blah, blah, whatever. It's just a bullshit mentality. It's a mentality of suffering and insecurity. Because the reality is, if people watch me, they're watching me. If they watch them, they're watching them. If both of us empower each other, we bring more people to watch Valheim. We don't just steal each other's viewers. We also bring new viewers to care about the game again. So I don't buy this notion that everyone is like competitors. I think that's some psychological bullshit that represents how insecure people are. But really, that's not what's going on. And like if you're trying to outsell and outmaneuver people, you benefit from viewing people as your competitors. Don't get me wrong. But you can also benefit from having completely different mentalities from that. And I've personally found that by sharing as much as possible, I can learn as much as possible. So this whole notion of people being competitors is just problematic at best. Very problematic. And don't get me wrong, there are some cases, like for example, when I was dropshipping, I would share everything I was doing. Everything I was doing. And because I was selling things, this meant people would copy what I was selling, right? So that obviously meant that I would sell less. So depending on how you look at that, I could be screwing myself over, right? I mean, obviously from a purely profit perspective, what an idiot I was to do something that other people copied that made me less profitable. But ultimately, the act of doing that taught me that I care about YouTube and that YouTube makes me happy. And it changed everything else about my life. So I got a lot out of it. It really did adjust things. So to just focus on profit is to ignore the most important parts of that journey. And this is a recurring theme with numbers and money. People often get lost, and they waste their very precious, short time thinking about how things might be, instead of doing them, experiencing them, etc., etc. In general, we're in a very lost time in that way. Let's see. So Pan said, bad games from intent approach standpoint. One's using psychology and marketing research to suck people in. Yeah, exactly, right? It's like, you don't have to game design as much if you use all these other... Like, I don't think using psychology is normal. Like, that's what game design is. It's using psychology to suck people into a game world. Like, what I do here is that. So I don't think that that is necessarily the problem, but absolutely the marketing thing and the way that they don't... okay, here's the thing. They use the psychology to get you to behave in a way that's profitable. But game design isn't that. That's marketing. Game design is using psychology to get somebody to have fun in a fake world. To care about a fake world. That's what game design is. It's that act. It's just like how, like, when you make a painting or something, you're trying to create an impression of a world or some kind of message in a player, in a person, in a viewer of the painting. And game design is like that. There's an experience that people are having, and you're working with that experience, and it has to do a lot with psychology. But I think you're absolutely right. Like, that's a big reason that the games end up being bad, because of that reality, right? That they're not made by game developers. They're made by people who are more invested in marketing. And the game developers are sort of used by these people, right? And that's been a part of game development for a long time. But it's almost like, I don't know, it's different these days. Like, there's games have this, they have this almost like immaturity. I don't even know. Yeah, so my internet's not better. It's actually 5:12 for me. So 6 a.m. for you guys maybe. But for me it's 5:15. So I still have 45 minutes before my internet goes to old crap. I just woke up at a more reasonable time this time. So I have a work meeting on every Sunday for my day job. And it's at like 10:30 p.m. So I usually have to stay up for that. But I like streaming and playing Valheim a lot, and I want to make it work. So apparently I'm very motivated to wake up. And I've been waking up to do these streams, which is kind of surprising, because like I went to bed at like 11, and then in order for me to do it properly, I have to wake up, take care of the chickens, water the plants. So that means I wake up at like 2:40, and I definitely don't want to. Like, when I do that, I'm like, I could just sleep. Like, what am I doing? But then after I water some plants, and then I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna play some Valheim. I mean, that doesn't sound so bad. It ends up working out, and then before I know it, I'm up and awake, out and about, caring about life. And as long as I rest appropriately on the weekend, it seems to work out. It certainly has worked out so far. This mine's kind of crazy. Look at this. What good placement, too. Like, we come down into this shaft, and then there's copper, like a copper node taking up like this entire room thing here. Like, I couldn't have planned that better myself. Like, that's so cool. I know that some people may think it's gimmicky, but for me, I really like the metals being inside and clipped into everything like this. It adds like an interesting depth, because you can get the metals from the dungeons this way. And it feels like, I don't know, this feels like mining to me. I mean, it feels just as much like mining as hitting some piece of rock in the forest with a pickaxe, you know? Hey, teens. I hope you sleep well. Yeah, it's late for you all. Yeah, this is it's a funny thing actually, waking up early to play a game. I definitely like, what an odd thing. But something happens to me when I do it, and like I feel like honestly when I work on Path of Magic, it's so inherently fulfilling. I haven't really experienced that kind of thing before. Like, that's why I've been able to do what I do. Like, I wasn't able to focus this much before, really. But I guess it's because I didn't really care. Whereas now, yeah, I mean, I've worked a lot on this thing. I feel like it's just been a couple months, but I was looking the other day. It's been like 9 months of almost constant daily development, which is crazy. Like, I didn't plan on that happening, definitely, but that's what's been happening. And it's so interesting, because it's very like, as long as I keep the rest of my life balanced, and I eat, and I like move around, and I don't use the computer all the time, I feel so genuinely fulfilled. Like, I can confidently, like, just do this, and I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't have everything, like, financially in my life that I need in these things. But it's like it doesn't matter. Like, somehow I just have this faith that as long as I do what is genuine and wholesome to me every single day, and I develop my skills, that somehow, some way or another, it will all work. And that mentality was a lot harder to take seriously before, because I dreamed of game design, but I wasn't actually practicing game design. Whereas now, there's like an actual server to work on, any mechanic imaginable to be tested and added, and people willing to try things out and play, and a channel to show it off on, and I don't have to pay for any of it. And it's like, I mean, it's perfect. Like, it's like a dream. I'd be a fool to not take advantage of that, right? And in that way, I'm very, very lucky, because I may not have like a nice computer or something fancy or the best internet, but I can just play games I care about and pay part of my rent doing it and learn about game development. And that's what I have always wanted. So in that way, I get to live a simple life doing the things that matter to me, which is more important to me than earning more money. Because I used to have a more normal job, believe it or not. I used to do the whole drive a car to a place every day, go do that place, get really exhausted, get blamed for other people's problems, do the work of people who get paid more than you do, etc., etc., etc. Then get home, be exhausted, have no time for yourself, and deal with some kind of relationship with other people who have no time for themselves, so basically they don't appreciate anyone. That was life. And for me, I was like, did it for a couple of years, and I was like, what the fuck is this? This is what people are so excited about? Like, I don't want this. I do not want this. I guess it was a little different than that, though, because I got really sick. I literally couldn't do it anymore. I started suffering from chronic illness and Lyme disease and all sorts of issues. I had problems with my energy. It was pretty rough. And the crazy thing is, the more I tried to get help, the more people tried to make money off of me. And ultimately, I wasn't able to get any help. And I was able to change everything by leaving. So I don't know what that means for others. I'm not the best role model, I think, for most people, because yeah, I'm not very encouraging about participation in society and these things. Definitely, both my parents got very sick. My dad died when I was a kid. My mom got cancer. She had to pay for it. She spent years of her life paying for it. So I've seen personally a lot of things happen to people. And I don't trust I don't trust societal forces in the same way that my peers do, just because I've been burned. Like, it, and I don't even mean, I'm not even cynical, to be honest. It's just like, once you've seen things, like as a kid, like I saw my dad die. So I took things more seriously after that. But other people haven't had those experiences, right? So just because you've seen something and you take it seriously doesn't mean other people do. And it put me in a position where I became like abrasive, basically, to people. Just because that's like in my personality, and it works, like the way I am works really well for game development, in all honesty, because I'm very like, I have an instinct to challenge everything that's normal. So like if there's something that everyone thinks is like really important and you have to do it, I'm gonna not do it. Like that's my attitude, basically. And like, I don't try and be that way. I've just come to understand that that's how I behave, and I utilize it. And it works in game development very well, because it allows me to find things that aren't necessary, that we think are necessary, pretty easily. Whereas in real life, I end up being very abrasive to people. But like, that's what's cool about all you guys, because you're quite supportive and you accept my nonsense. Whereas like in my personal life, I mean, like, I was, let me put it this way. I was propelled enough through feelings of betrayal and meaninglessness that I left and chose to stay in a country where I couldn't speak the language and I didn't know people. And I found more safety there. Like, that's how, like, how messed up, how messed up it is. Oh, I appreciate that, Teens. Teens says I'm normal. My experience, though, begs to differ. It's not, okay, let me put it this way. I agree in a certain sense. Like, I'm normal in my ability to just be a happy human. I'm very normal. I don't have many problems in that way. I can just appreciate things and have fun, and I can understand that when other people fuck up and are mean, like, I can take that personally, but for the most part, like, it is not about me, you know? Like, I understand that. So I get that in that sense, I'm very normal. I'm able to handle conflict. I'm able to be mature, blah, blah, blah. But that isn't normal. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, normal is sick and suffering and, like, basically frustrated about things in your life and lashing out on other people, not getting enough rest, like, not having the skills that you need to handle situations because you were taught to do things that don't matter anymore. Like, that's normal, you know? Like, normal is like, you get grumpy and you screw over your partner by, like, giving them crap about something that ultimately, like, you should have just given them a hug or whatever. Like, that's normal. Like, so I get what you're saying. But the word normal, for me, I think of it very literally. I think, like, what people are normally like, not like a person who can function normally. But I understand that when people say I'm normal in particular, that's what they mean. They tend to mean, like, oh, you're just peaceful, you're able to be okay, which is rare. So it's like funny how it, like, that's what being a normal human is, but that's not normal in our modern era. And it's funny too, because that's one of the things I love about Nicaragua. Like, it's so, like, on one hand, it's becoming like the West. So I'm not saying it's like some paradise from these vibes and energies, but for the most part, people in Nicaragua don't have very much material comfort. They don't have access to a lot of the things that we're very used to in the US. And for that reason, they tend to lean on other comforts more often. So, for example, people in Nicaragua, just in general, are much better at having a conversation. Almost every Nicaraguan person I've met is able to shut up and, like, listen genuinely to what the other person is saying. And that is not... okay, maybe it's just because I lived in the US and I was used to the argumentative identity culture of that place. But it was quite interesting for me, actually, like, dealing with Nicaraguan culture in that way, because it's very it's much more conversational. People are much more conversational, especially to a foreigner. Like, you can literally, like, just walk around and get into conversations with other people as a foreigner in Nicaragua. But even if you're not a foreigner, like I mentioned, people here don't have as much material, so they're less likely to go to a restaurant with their friends, and they're more likely to just sit in front of their house and like sip coffee and like chat. Make sense? So like, it's not that they don't do things. It's just the things they do don't usually involve spending money at a business. But what's also interesting is there's a lot more small business here. So like, people do more business. And when I meet, like, cause I've lived here for 6 years. And I first was only around foreigners and other like wealthy expats. That's where I met the like super wealthy people that I've interacted with. And I'm not saying all of them were fucked up, by the way. Like, some of them were fine. But definitely, like, there didn't seem to be any correlation to more money equals more happiness. It just seemed like more money equals more potential to distract yourself from your demons. Like, in all honesty, at the end of the day, you gotta still face your demons and your problems. Otherwise, they're gonna cause you to hurt yourself and people you love. Like, there's no way around that. And sometimes money just makes everything so much more potentially messy. Like, there's certain people who would be alive if they didn't have money at that time in their life. You know, like, it's true. Like, some people just can't handle all of the things you can get into. And, I don't know, I don't blame people. You know, I've never met someone, and then, let's say a person has a lot of problems. Every single person I've met in my life who has a lot of problems, people will talk about it like, oh, they're fucked up, they're crazy, whatever. But that's just people talking shit. If you actually like get to know the person and you learn about them, their trauma is always explained by their childhood. Always. It's not like, oh, sometimes it happens. No, every single time. If you see a person hurting themselves and hurting other people, it's not like, oh, they have some mental health disease. No, their parents weren't there for them. Something happened, or their parents weren't able to be for them. They couldn't afford to be around, and then somebody else was, and that person was abusive. Like, that's what our reality is, but we act like, no, we can't talk about abuse and trauma and problems, because then people will feel sad. Oh, no. Meanwhile, they kill themselves because they have no ability to handle trauma. So, like, I don't know, which is worse? Like, being a bit sad because you have to deal with a part of life that you're gonna have to deal with no matter what? Or being fake, you know? It's like, it's tragic. Teen says, we do not treasure our children. And that is a great way to put it, to be honest. I often go on that rant, actually. Sometimes my family gets offended. But usually when they actually try and understand me, they hear me out. Because it's not like, I don't know, it's not like people don't love their children. I mean, I get how one could make the argument that they don't behave in a loving way. But it's more that, like, the older generations came from a world where you could get a... It really was as simple as, like, if you got college educated, the chance of you having a better life was way more likely. And, like, don't get me wrong, like in Nicaragua, for example, that's still true. Like, if you're educated here, you're not in debt, you're more likely to know another language, and you're more likely to get a job when it's hard to get a well-paying job. So, like, in Nicaragua, getting a college education is quite useful. But that's the thing, that it's only true in the beginning. Once most people become college educated, it stops functioning that way. And the more people get educated, the less useful each education becomes, because education is only as useful as your leverage it gives you over others. And that we like to make it seem like that's not the case, you know? But, like, that's the reality of education. It's only as valuable as your ability to leverage the education over the uneducated that also participate in the society you're involved in. Which, like, isn't... I mean, when you phrase it that way, it doesn't sound very good, does it? But that is what it means. And like, we like to paint education as just this fantastic thing that fixes all problems and opens all doors. But yet we live in a world where we have all of the food we need to feed everybody, and people are still starving. We have all of the medicine we need to solve every disease, yet people still die of preventable diseases. And we figured out the true causes of heart disease and cancer and these things 30 to 40 years ago, and our society still completely disregards them. We still consume carbohydrates en masse. We focus on fat being bad and unhealthy. And the reality is that carbs are the thing that cause our diseases. We consume huge amounts of basically slave food, you know? And like, we've made it seem like it's necessary, but like, when people say that bread, that like human civilization was built on the backs of bread, like, they don't understand how literal that is. We literally built most of our buildings in existence using slave labor, where people are fed the minimum amount of food possible to sustain their bodies. So we feed people as cheap as we can. So like, that's the nature of grain and carbohydrate. That's the true origin of it. It's a way to cheaply feed the masses that over time gives them heart disease. And you probably won't believe me, and that's fine. But that's the guts of it. And like, you can look in ancient Egyptian history, bread society, they have mummies, they have all sorts of stuff, you know? Oh, Constantine, you are going to be eternally frustrated if you expect me to play in a min-maxing way, if you expect me to play efficiently, if you expect me to program efficiently, if you expect any of that, you're gonna suffer. That's not how I am. It's not how I behave. It's not how I develop. So, like, you can keep making comments about, like, oh, I'm not doing this the right way. Whatever, like, you're backseating, that's fine. But I'm not gonna take you that seriously, because, like, you play the game how you want to play the game. If you want to make comments about how I play the game, that's fine. But, like, sometimes, not just with me, but you're also gonna piss other people off if you just tell them, like, this is the way to do it. Because, like, that's the way you want to do it. That's fine. But that doesn't mean that everyone else needs to do it your way, right? Pretty basic. But it's, I mean, this is just the nature of streaming, right? People are going to make comments on how I play. And, I mean, that's a common thing, though. It's true that in Valheim, the developers view item management, like this kind of stuff, as an important part of the game. And like, also for me, like, you gotta realize, dude, like, I'm narrating. Like, try talking, not Pan, sorry, just to be clear, I'm not talking to Pan, I'm talking to Constantine. When you're narrating constantly and also behaving, like, see how it is. Go try and do it yourself. Go do a live stream, make a video, and try and keep track of what you're doing at the same time, and see how it is. And you might find that it's not quite as simple as you're claiming. Like, I get what you're going for, because it is true. Like, for example, right now I'm encumbered, I'm walking, right? Normally when I play, I wouldn't behave this way. I would just be quiet, I wouldn't be talking, and I would do what I need to do, and I wouldn't have to worry about it, right? But because I'm streaming, I have to think about what I'm saying, what I'm doing in the game, also how interesting what I'm doing is visually, and all of these things at the same time. And that ends up being a lot to manage. It's not easy. Like, so like, I get what you mean, but go try it yourself. See how it is. You might find that it is actually pretty challenging to perform adequately. And that's even like a known thing about streaming. Like, if you're trying to narrate and storytell in these things, and you're playing a competitive game, you literally lose like 30% of your efficiency. And you could literally just manage it. You can look at it mathematically. There's a lot of research on YouTube about how these things work. And your mind has limits on how many things it can manage, how many things it can deal with. And when you add a bunch of those things to that plate, it ends up messing things up. And you're not as organized as you might otherwise be, etc., etc., etc. But I think for now, that's all. I'm gonna head out. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye. Thanks for watching another episode of The Path of Magic. All of the crazy nonsense that you've been seeing so far has been done with Expand World Prefabs. Expand World Prefabs is a fantastic server-side BepInEx mod developed by Yair. And if it wasn't for Yair's hard work, none of this would be possible. So I strongly encourage you to support Yair if you can. And if you're interested in supporting my work, there's two ways that you can do so. By getting your own dedicated Valheim server at Zap Hosting. I've got lots of tutorials showing you how to set everything up, and it doesn't even take that long. All you'll need to do is go to the link in my description, zaphosting.com/jpvalheim. That'll get you set up with the BepInEx server straight away, and then you just need to change a couple config files, and I have all of the information that you need for that. The second way is to support me on Patreon, and you can just check out the link in the description below if you're interested in doing that. I understand that some of you might want to support me, but, you know, you're not going to get a server to do so, so here you go. Now you have a way to do it. Thanks for watching, and I'm going to see you in the next episode of The Path of Magic. Bye-bye.